This video is 10 things to do before you go fishing. Before you go fishing, there are always lots of things you can do to help make that trip more fun and more successful on the day. This is the 10 things you can do before going fishing to help make that trip that little bit better. Number 1, before you go fishing, you need to know where you're going to go fishing. Now, if you're just starting out, it's probably worthwhile going to what's known as a day ticket fishery. Now, this is a fishery that is basically run and you can buy a day ticket to go fishing there for the day. It's not exclusive to members and it's not what people refer to as a syndicate. It's a day ticket fishery. These kind of lakes are generally, and I do mean generally, easier to catch at, although that does not guarantee that you will catch a fish. We've all had blank sessions at these day ticket venues. If they're not feeding, they're not feeding, or if your tactics are wrong, the tactics are wrong. That's part of fishing. It's always worth getting onto Google and having a look at what fisheries are near you. Always do this beforehand and put a bit of preparation into it. Now, this isn't to say that you can't fish at rivers if you're just starting out. You certainly can. There's no reason why you can't fish anywhere. And certainly if that's all that's near you, then fantastic, do that. It just can be a little bit more difficult on rivers because rather than just dealing with still water, you can be dealing with fast flows and other various things that do go on at rivers. But either way, I would suggest if you have the option, go for a day ticket fishery for your first one. Number 2, check the rules of the fishery you're going to, whether that be a lake, river, canal, wherever. There's generally rules for everywhere you fish, and these can vary massively. Some lakes or rivers it has to be barbless, other places it has to be barbed. So do make sure you check this. It can come down to what baits you can use, can't use, what tackle you can and can't use, what methods you can and can't use. For example, there's some day ticket fisheries where you can't do what's known as spodding, which is basically where you have, as I described, like a little rocket on the end of a rod, and you basically cast that out for it to drop bait all in the area that you're fishing. Some day ticket fisheries don't allow that, so if you check the rules beforehand, you can prepare accordingly. For example, you might then take a catapult so that you can get the bait where you want it to be if you're fishing that little bit further away and can't do it with a normal throw. So it's always worth checking the rules, and what you don't want to do is turn up with some illegal tackle and the fishery have a rule that if you turn up with that, they kick you off. You don't want that to happen. That would be a disaster of a day, especially if you travel a bit to get there. So always check the fishery rules before going fishing. Number 3, check the weather in advance. Now, I don't necessarily mean check it a week, 2 weeks beforehand if you're really organised, but certainly check it a day or two before, the night before, and on the morning, as this can massively dictate what tackle you need to take and how the session may go. I wouldn't expect, especially if you're just starting out fishing, don't worry about getting too much into what the pressure is and stuff like that. You might catch, you might not, either way, but certainly be prepared, because there's a big difference that if you're going to go and it's going to be chucking it down with rain all day compared to you're going to go and it's going to be 30-degree heat, you're going to be getting cooked. It does take a bit of preparation. Obviously, if it's gonna be hot, you need to be preparing in terms of sun cream, a bit thinking about what you're going to do about shade, a hat. I wear a hat because I'm a baldy head. Like today, it's fairly sunny. I've got shade here, which was part of my planning, but I know the sun will come round. And last thing I want is a burned head, which will cause me issues further down the line. You've got to protect yourself from the sun, so sun cream, hat, things like that are definites. You know, it's always better to be prepared, especially when you're first starting out and you're not used to being outside and getting used to the various things that can and do happen. Certainly if you're in the UK like me, the weather can change at the drop of a hat as well.
you know, I could be here all sunny like this, the next minute it might be chucking it down, which is why pretty much there's certain things you will always take with you when you're fishing in the UK. But just be prepared for the weather, don't get caught out. We all have mobile phones and such now. Check it on an app beforehand, and basically just have a look, just have a general knowledge of what the weather will be like for your session. Number 4, check the route in advance. Now what I mean by this is have a bit of travel planning beforehand. If you're going to be driving there, which most of you probably are because of the amount of tackle we end up taking, plan how long it's going to take you to get there so that you're going to get there at the time you want to. Are there any toll roads on the way, etc. Just have a little bit of planning in place, and also think about the time of day you're going to get caught in traffic, just so that you're not going to miss anything or have a horrendous trip. It can just make it that little bit easier on the day. Number 5, dress appropriately for the day. What I mean by this is don't just expect that you're going to go there in shorts and t-shirt, flip-flops and have the time of your life. Especially if you're in the UK, obviously, as I said about the weather, things can change rapidly. Dress appropriately, so bring hats if you need to. I would suggest it's certainly nearly always worthwhile having what I refer to as a packer max, or a small fold-up coat or something lightweight that's fairly waterproof, so that if you get these showers you have that little bit of resistance with you. Also think about bearing in mind the time of day you might be fishing till. If you're going to stay till early evening, late evening, depending on time of year, it can go from being very nice and warm to actually quite chilly, so it's always worth having a jumper or something like that with you. Also, if you can, certainly if you've been to the venue before, have a think about around the lake as well. Are there lots of stinging nettles and such like that that are going to cause you problems and, you know, make your legs itchy as anything for the whole day? You don't want them kind of things. I generally, most of the time, will wear trousers for that reason when I'm fishing. However, you know, it doesn't hurt if you've got the space. Pack yourself some shorts. You can always get changed if you need to, especially if you've got a bivvy or something to hide yourself away and your dignity a bit. But just dress appropriately is my advice there. Flip-flops aren't really ideal when you're dealing with fishing stuff. Obviously you're using hooks. What you don't want to do is end up ending the session with a trip down A&E, so you dress appropriately. Number 6, always prepare and bring with you food and water. Even if you think you're not going to be hungry or whatever on the bank, I guarantee if you're not catching anything for a bit, you'll start getting peckish, and there's nothing worse than being somewhere miles away from home and having no kind of comfort stuff. I always take with me a good old thermos flask. These things aren't particularly expensive. You can obviously get cheaper ones, better ones, but what they do provide is that little bit of comfort from home, so you can have a cup of tea or have a coffee. Obviously if you're going for longer sessions, you would generally want to make it fresh if you've got a little kettle on the stove. But certainly if you're just starting out, you wouldn't have necessarily invested in all this kind of equipment, so you won't have it. A thermos is an easy way, certainly for day sessions, to be able to keep your drinks either cool or hot, and be able to enjoy the day a bit more. Pack yourself something suitable for lunch. Now obviously what can happen is if you're catching fish, you obviously can end up with the stinky fishy hands, which is a nightmare if you're eating some sandwiches or something. That's why I will generally always pack my sandwiches in like tin foil or something like that will kind of mask that horrible fishy smell from my hands a bit. But the most important thing I do take is I generally take wet wipes, so I can actually give my hands a good wipe down, and obviously alcohol gel can be another good thing, but obviously just make sure you've cleaned your hands off suitably before touching any fish. So yeah, it just makes it a little bit more bearable. Wet wipes are generally one of the easiest. You can just give yourself a quick wipe. They might have a slight scent to them or something, so you won't smell it when you're eating. You don't want to be put off your food and be starving all day. Number 7, if you live in the UK, basically just always take a fishing umbrella with you, because it will be sunny one minute, rain in the next. You don't want to get sunburnt, you don't want to get drenched, take one. This thing basically comes absolutely everywhere with me. They take seconds to put up, they're not heavy. Take a fishing umbrella, it will stop you being miserable when you're drenched. Number 8. Always speak to other local fishermen and the bailiff at wherever the venue is you're going beforehand, as that can massively help you prepare for your session. Certain baits might work really well at one lake, but not at all at the lake you're going to. So it's always worth speaking to the bailiffs and getting a bit of a lowdown on how that lake works. Obviously you can go on groups on Facebook and stuff as well and ask other anglers where they fished, and they may hopefully be willing to tell you some of their tips to help you have a good session. Number 9, check your tackle before you go. We've all been on sessions before and been a bit lazy and not checked it. You turn up and then something will be missing or broken and it can completely ruin your session. Always check it before, whether it's a day before, 2 days before, so you have enough time that if your reel is broken, your rod's broken, you only have a couple of floats but they're broken, you have enough time to be able to go and get them bits so the session has more chance of being successful. Always check them. If you're using bait alarms, check the batteries. You don't want to turn up and not be able to use them. Little things like this can be the difference between being unsuccessful on the bank and landing one. Number 10. Prepare your bait prior to your fishing session. Now what I mean by this is, for example, if you're fishing with luncheon meat, don't come to the lake with it in the tin, spend ages trying to get it out, cut it up. You could have done that all before. When you're at the lake, you want to maximise your time out there fishing, so don't kind of lose time when you can be prepared beforehand. Things like sweet corn stuff, you can get it out the night before and get it in a tub. Ground baits you can make up the night before. Sometimes you have to prepare your baits out there, but certainly if you're using anything that needs cooking like hemp or anything like that, it all needs to be done in advance, so you're far more likely to be successful and prevent that blanking session by having more time actually with your bait out there fishing than if you haven't prepared it. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate everyone who has watched my videos so far. Thank you. I hope these tips help you in your fishing sessions and you prevent them blanks and get more fish on the bank. Thank you for watching.